Chapter 1. The Solstice Burden. The wind, sharp as a shard of obsidian, carried the scent of pine, frozen earth, and something else, the metallic tang of fear, thin and cold beneath the heavier perfume of the pack. It was the winter solstice, the longest night, and the great lodge of the Silver Fang thrummed with a nervous energy that vibrated through the heavy timbers and into the very marrow of my bones. My bones, which ached with a familiar premonition, a deep-seated thrum that mirrored the wolf coiled within me, restless and pacing the confines of my skin. I stood near the edge of the gathering, a little apart, as was my habit, my place. Elara, 27 turns of the season, and still unmated. An anomaly, a problem, tonight more than ever a commodity. The air in the lodge was thick with the smell of wood smoke from the central fire pit. Roasting venison, damp fur, and the unwashed bodies of my kin. But beneath it all, for me, was that other scent, the one that prickled my senses and made the hackles on my inner wolf rise. It wasn't just the general anxiety of a pack clinging to dwindling territory, nor the bite of the encroaching winter. It was something specific, a portent carried on that icy wind. My gaze drifted across the faces in the flickering firelight. Old Man Hemlock, his muzzle grayed and his eyes clouded with the mists of too many winters, was regaling a cluster of pups with a story, his voice a low rumble. His tales were always of the glorious past, of vast territories and abundant prey, of a time before the two legs, the humans, grew so bold, so numerous, so armed with their cursed silver and hungry fire. The pups listened, wide-eyed, but even their youthful energy seemed subdued tonight. They sensed it too, the fragile peace that felt more like a held breath than true tranquility. My own alpha, Marcus, stood by the great hearth, his broad back to most of the room as he spoke in low tones with Elara, his mate and our pack's foremost healer. Marcus was a good alpha, strong and steady, but the lines of worry etched around his eyes had deepened over the last few seasons. His scent was usually one of solid earth and calm authority, but tonight an undercurrent of something acrid, like burnt wood, clung to him. Pressure. He was under immense pressure, and I was a significant part of it. The solstice was a time for reflection, for reaffirming bonds, for remembering the fallen and looking to the future. But for the Silver Fang, this solstice felt different. It felt like a precipice. Our numbers were dwindling. Skirmishes with the Blackwood Pack to the east had cost us warriors, and the human encroachment from the south? That was a wound that wept continuously, stealing land, poisoning our hunting grounds, and taking our kin in silent, terrible ways. Ways that left no bodies to mourn, only the stench of sulfur and the glint of discarded silver casings in the snow. A shiver traced its way down my spine, not entirely from the cold that seeped through the chinks in the log walls. My wolf stirred, a low growl vibrating in my chest, a warning I couldn't voice. She felt it too, the wrongness of the air, the thin ice we were all skating on. "Danger," she whispered in the primal language of instinct. "Close." I closed my eyes for a moment, drawing in a slow breath, trying to parse the myriad scents. Pine, yes, damp earth, frozen stone, the musky, familiar scent of my packmates. Each a unique signature, from young Torrin's eager greenwood smell to old Elmsworth's dry, papery aroma. But then a flicker on the wind, carried from outside, faint but undeniable, the harsh, sterile scent of iron and something else, something that spoke of the north. And from another direction, fainter still, but just as potent, a whiff of dry grasses, sun-baked rock, and a wild, almost feral musk that hinted at the south. They were coming, or at least their presence was anticipated, their invisible tendrils of influence already reaching into our strained sanctuary. Kalen of the Nightfrost Pack from the frozen north, and Rorik of the Sunstone Pack from the arid southern canyons. Two alphas, two powerful rival packs. Both, according to the whispers that had slithered through the Silver Fang den for weeks, had expressed interest in an alliance, interest in our remaining territory, a crucial buffer zone between their own. Interest in me, my hands clenched at my sides, nails biting into my palms. The only unmated she-wolf of breeding age in the Silverfang pack. A prize, a token, a warm body to seal a pact and bear the next generation for whichever alpha won the grim lottery. The thought sent a wave of bitter cold through me, colder than the solstice wind. My wolf snarled, a sharp, rebellious sound in my mind. Never. But what choice did I truly have? The needs of the pack, the survival of our bloodline, these were the iron laws that governed our existence. Marcus had not spoken to me directly about it, not yet. But Lyra's soft, pitying glances, the way the other she-wolves sometimes looked at me with a mixture of envy and fear, the sudden silences when I approached a group, they all spoke volumes. A heavy hand fell on my shoulder, and I started, my head snapping up. It was Boren, Marcus's second, his face grim. His scent was all leather and old battles, and tonight a touch of something like resignation. "Elara," he rumbled, his voice low. "Marcus wishes to speak with you, and Lyra in the council chamber." Council chamber, the small private room off the main hall, reserved for the most serious discussions. The solstice burden was about to be laid squarely on my shoulders. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. My wolf paced, agitated. "Fight," she urged. "Flee." But where would I go? A lone wolf, especially a she-wolf, wouldn't last long in these contested lands, not with hunters and rival packs prowling, and abandoning the Silverfang. The thought itself was a betrayal too deep to contemplate, despite the suffocating weight of their expectations. They were my family, my only anchor in a world that grew more hostile by the day. I nodded, my throat too tight for words, and followed Boren through the throng. Heads turned as I passed. I felt their eyes on me, speculative, assessing. The whispers didn't stop, but they dropped to a lower, more insidious murmur, like dry leaves skittering across frozen ground. I kept my gaze fixed on Boren's broad back, trying to project an outward calm I didn't feel. My lineage, though not alpha blood, was old and strong within the Silverfang. My grandmother had been a formidable warrior. Her tales still whispered around the fires. Perhaps some of that strength still flowed in my veins, though it felt like a dying ember right now. The council chamber was small, windowless, lit by a single tallow candle that cast long dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. Animal pelts covered the floor, muffling our footsteps. Marcus stood before a crudely drawn map of our territories, his finger tracing a line near the southern border, where the human settlements were creeping ever closer. Lyra sat on a low stool, her hands clasped in her lap, her usually serene face etched with worry. Her scent, normally a comforting blend of herbs and moonlight, was clouded with something sharper, like willow bark, the scent of sorrow. "Elara, Marcus began, his voice heavy, devoid of its usual warmth. He turned from the map, and the full weight of his alpha presence pressed down on me. It wasn't aggressive, not yet, but it was a tangible force, demanding respect, demanding obedience. "Thank you for coming." I inclined my head. "Alpha. The solstice is upon us," he continued, his gaze unwavering. "A time of endings and beginnings. Our pack stands at a crossroads, Elara. You know this." I did. Every hunt that yielded less, every patrol that returned with news of fresh human incursions, or the scent of rival scouts, every new grave dug in the frozen earth, hammered that knowledge home. Lyra spoke then, her voice soft but firm, like moss over stone. "The whispers are true, child. Envoys are expected, one from Kalin of the Nightfrost, another from Rorik of the Sunstone." My breath caught. So it was no longer speculation. It was fact. The wolves were at the door. "They seek an alliance," Marcus stated, his tone flat. "Both of them. Our territory, small as it has become, is strategically vital, a bulwark or a bridge." He paused, and his eyes, the color of winter twilight, bored into mine. "And they both know we have an unmated she-wolf of strong lineage. There it was, and the unadorned truth, laid bare in the stark candlelight. I was the key, the price, the sacrifice. A surge of rebellious heat flooded through me, my wolf rising to meet the challenge, her growl a silent inferno in my soul. They will not have us. And what if I refuse? The words were out before I could stop them, quiet but edged with a steel I hadn't known I possessed. Or perhaps it was the wolf speaking through me. Marcus's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. A flicker of something, surprise, disappointment, crossed his face before it settled back into a mask of grim authority. Refusal is a difficult path, Elara. For you, for the pack. Difficult. Lyra's voice was laced with a sadness that cut deeper than any reprimand. Child, think. The black would gnaw at our eastern flank. The humans, they advance daily from the south, their silver a constant threat. We lost young Finn and his mate just last moon, remember? Their traps are more cunning now, their fire more relentless. Her gaze flickered to the map, to the creeping stain that represented human encroachment. Without a strong ally, how long can the Silver Fang hold out? How many more must we lose before we are nothing but a memory whispered on the wind, like the great dire packs of old? The memory of Finn and Sorrel, their bright spirits extinguished, their scent forever gone from the pack, was a fresh gaping wound. Finn, barely an adult, always eager to prove himself. Sorrel, quiet and kind, with a gift for finding the rarest herbs, vanished. The patrol had found only a patch of scorched earth, the faint, lingering scent of human chemicals, and a single broken arrow fletched with crow feathers, the mark of a particularly ruthless band of hunters that had been plaguing the region. My anger faltered, a cold dread seeping into its place. Lyra was right. The reality of our situation was a harsh, unforgiving landscape. My personal desires, my wolf's rebellious pride, what were they against the survival of an entire pack? Against the faces of the pups I'd watched grow, the elders who held our history, the packmates who were the only family I'd ever known? Kaelin of the Night Frost, Marcus continued, his voice a low growl, pulling me back from the abyss of despair. He is formidable. His pack is large, disciplined. They rule the northern tundra with an iron fist. An alliance with him would secure our northern border completely. He is known for his ruthlessness, but also for his ability to protect what is his. His scent shifted subtly, a hint of something cold and sharp, like glacial ice. He respected Kaelin's strength, even if he didn't trust the Alpha himself. And Rorik of the Sunstone? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The Southern Alpha, the one whose scent carried that wild, almost untamed musk, tied to ancient prophecy he refused to reveal. There was something about that faint scent, carried on the wind, that both intrigued and unsettled my wolf. Marcus frowned, a deep furrow appearing between his brows. Rorik is different. Younger than Kaelin, but no less dangerous. His pack is smaller, more elusive, masters of the broken lands to the south. They are unpredictable, fierce. There are old tales, prophecies, that cling to his bloodline, though he speaks little of them. He gestured vaguely towards the south on the map. An alliance with him could potentially push back the human threat, as his lands border theirs more directly. But he is a wildfire, Elara. Unpredictable, some say reckless. One cold and ruthless, offering stability through sheer, unyielding power. The other wild and dangerous, a gamble, tied to mysteries I couldn't fathom, but which hinted at a different kind of strength. Both wanted me. Both wanted what I represented. Loyalty, strength. A future for their lineage, cemented with mine. My mind reeled. My wolf paced, a caged thing, torn between the instinct to submit for the good of the pack and the desperate urge to break free. I felt like a rabbit caught between two wolves, the scent of my own fear thick in my nostrils. They will arrive within days, Marcus said, his voice final. Both of them. They have agreed to a neutral meeting on our territory at the Standing Stones 3 nights from now. Under the solstice moon's wane, they will make their proposals. He didn't say to you. He didn't need to. Proposals, such a civilized word for what felt like being offered up on an altar. And I am to choose? I asked, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Lyra reached out then, her hand cool and dry on my arm. Her scent was a little stronger now, the willow bark mixed with the faintest trace of chamomile. An attempt at soothing. You will listen, Elara. You will meet them. You will weigh what they offer. The pack's survival hangs in the balance. Her eyes, wise and ancient, held mine. But know this, child. Your heart, your instinct, they matter. The moon goddess does not guide us blindly. Your wolf will know. Trust her. Trust her? My wolf was a tempest of conflicting urges right now. She felt the primal pull of alpha power, the allure of strength that could shield our pack. Kalen's scent, though cold, spoke of unyielding protection, a fortress against the storm. Rorik's, wilder, hinted at a raw, untamed power, a fire that could consume enemies, or perhaps oneself. But beneath those surface reactions, my wolf also recoiled from the idea of being a pawn, a broodmare. There was a deeper instinct, a whisper of something else, something mine, a secret power, a hidden truth I barely understood myself, a legacy from my grandmother that was more than just stories. I might be the end of them both. The thought, unbidden, sent a thrill of fear and a strange surge of fierce, almost terrifying power through me. Marcus, I said, meeting his gaze directly. What if neither is the right choice? What if an alliance with either of them leads to a different kind of destruction? A war between them, with us caught in the middle, or a loss of who we are, swallowed by a larger, more dominant pack? He sighed, the sound heavy with the weight of his responsibilities. Those are risks, Elara, always. But inaction is a greater risk now. The humans, they are becoming more organized, more aggressive. Old Man Hemlock found this near the Whisperwind Creek yesterday. He reached into a pouch at his belt and pulled out a small twisted piece of metal, silver, a bullet deformed from impact. Not just a casing this time, one that had found its mark. My blood ran cold. Whisperwind Creek was deep within our territory, a place where the pups often played. No one was harmed, he said quickly, seeing the terror in my eyes. He found it embedded in an old oak. A warning shot, perhaps, or a stray from a hunter who got too close. But his scent betrayed him. The acrid note of fear was stronger now. He didn't believe it was a stray. Silver, fire, they were closing in. The fragile world of the Silver Fang was crumbling, and I, Elara, was apparently the mortar needed to rebuild, or the prize to be fought over as the walls came crashing down. Think on it, Elara, Marcus said, his voice softer now, a hint of the kind alpha I knew beneath the strained leader. Spend time with your wolf. Listen to the wind. The moon will guide you, but the choice, it will ultimately fall to you. Which path offers the Silver Fang the best chance? Which alpha can you endure? Endure, not love, not desire, endure. The word settled like a stone in my stomach. I nodded slowly, unable to speak, past the lump in my throat. The weight of it all was crushing. The expectations, the danger, the impossible choice. 2 alphas, 2 futures, and the silent, creeping threat of the humans, their silver glinting in the shadows of my mind. As I turned to leave the council chamber, my gaze fell upon the map again, the small, fragile heart of the Silver Fang territory, surrounded by larger, more powerful entities, and the insidious creep of human settlements. It looked like a wounded animal, cornered and bleeding, and I was the offering meant to appease the predators, or the weapon to fight them off. The solstice wind howled outside, a mournful, lonely sound. It carried the scent of snow, of pine, and beneath it, stronger now, more defined, the distinct, chilling promise of the north, and the unsettling, fiery allure of the south. They were coming, and the moon, in her cold, impartial wisdom, was watching, waiting to see which way the blood would flow, my blood, or theirs. I stepped back out into the main hall. The firelight seemed dimmer, the sounds of the pack more muted, as if a shadow had fallen over us all. My path led me past the entrance, where the heavy hide door flap shifted slightly with a gust of wind, and for a fleeting second, a new scent, sharp and unmistakable, cut through all the others. Wood smoke, yes, but also wet dog, old iron, and something else. Something that smelled like old dried blood and the acrid chemical tang of human hatred. My wolf recoiled violently, a silent scream in my mind. Hunters. Before I could even process the thought, before I could utter a warning, a piercing howl tore through the night, not from one of our own, but from the dark forest beyond our lodge. It was a sound of pure agony, abruptly cut short. Then another, closer this time. A cry of alarm from one of our sentries. The sounds of the solstice gathering died instantly. Every head snapped up. Every wolf, human and beast, went utterly still, listening. The scent of fear in the lodge became a suffocating blanket. Marcus was already moving, his true form rippling beneath his skin, a low growl tearing from his throat. "To arms, we are attacked!" The world exploded into chaos. But even as the shouts and snarls of my packmates filled the air, as the scent of bloodlust and terror warred for dominance, one chilling certainty settled deep within me, colder than the solstice ice. The choice might have just been taken out of my hands. Peace was never an option. And the red on the snow, it was about to begin. Chapter 2. North Wind's Claim. The world fractured. One moment, the strained quiet of the solstice gathering. The next, a maelstrom of snarling fury and the stench of terror. Marcus's roar, "To arms, we are attacked," was less a command and more a primal detonation, unleashing the coiled power of the Silverfang pack. Bodies surged around me, human forms blurring as the change took them, bones cracking and reforming with sickening speed. The air thrummed with the resonant power of shifting, a wave of raw, untamed energy that prickled my skin and ignited a fire in my own blood. My wolf, Elara, who had been a restless prisoner within, surged forward, demanding release. There was no thought, no hesitation, only the blinding, urgent need to protect, to fight. The change ripped through me, a familiar agony that was also a profound liberation. My senses exploded. The flickering candlelight of the lodge became 1,000 dazzling points of light. The myriad scents of fear, wood smoke, and blood, both shifter and sickeningly human, assaulted my heightened olfactory nerves with an almost physical force. My human thoughts receded, replaced by a sharpened, instinctual clarity. Threat. Defend. Survive. I was on 4 paws, muscles bunched, claws unsheathed and digging into the packed earth floor of the Great Lodge. My fur, the color of winter twilight like my alpha's, bristled along my spine. A low growl rumbled in my chest, a sound that was pure wolf, vibrating with lethal intent. Around me, the pack was a whirlwind of fur and fangs. Warriors, their forms massive and formidable, surged towards the main entrance, which shuddered under blows from outside. The shrieks of the pups, quickly herded to the back by the older she-wolves, were sharp needles in the cacophony. Borin, already in his immense grizzled wolf form, a beast of scarred hide and relentless power, was at the forefront, a guttural roar ripping from his throat as he met the first wave of attackers. I saw a flash of silver, heard the distinctive sickening thwack as a projectile found flesh. A yelp of pain, quickly bitten off. Not Borin. One of the younger warriors, barely more than an adolescent, stumbled back, a dark stain blossoming on his flank. The scent of the hunters was overpowering now. That vile concoction of unwashed human sweat, old iron, the chemical sting of their weapons, and something else. A cold, fanatical hatred that was almost a physical presence. They weren't just here to hunt, they were here to exterminate. The realization sent a fresh wave of cold fury through me. I pushed forward, instinct guiding my paws. My place was not at the very front with the seasoned warriors, not yet. But neither would I cower with the pups. My grandmother's blood, the blood of a fighter, sang in my veins. I spotted Lyra, still in her human form, near the central fire pit, her face pale but resolute as she tore strips of linen, her healing herbs already laid out. Two younger she-wolves, their eyes wide with terror but their movements quick, assisted her. They needed protection. A section of the lodge wall, weaker than the rest, splintered inwards with a terrifying crack. Two human figures, clad in dark, heavy clothing, their faces obscured by shadows and grim determination, scrambled through the opening. One brandished a short, wickedly curved silver blade. The other leveled a squat, black weapon that spat fire and death. Before the other warriors, engaged at the main entrance, could react, I launched myself. There was no room for fear, only the driving imperative to protect the pack's heart. My leap carried me across the intervening space. A gray streak of motion, I hit the first human, the one with the firearm, with the full force of my momentum, my jaws snapping for his throat. He screamed, a high, thin sound, as we crashed to the ground. The gun clattered away. His scent was a nauseating wave of raw terror and stale tobacco. My teeth found fabric, then flesh, a satisfying, savage tear. He thrashed beneath me, his silver knife forgotten in his desperate attempt to fend me off. The second human, the one with the blade, turned, his eyes wide behind a crude mask. He lunged, the silver arcing towards me. I twisted, feeling the wind of the blade, the cold kiss of its passage a hair's breadth from my fur. Another warrior, a young male named Silas, whose scent was usually of fresh pine and playful mischief, slammed into him from the side, a blur of brown fur and snapping teeth. The human went down with a choked cry. The fight was brutal, chaotic, and terrifyingly intimate. The lodge, our sanctuary, had become a killing floor. The air was thick with the sounds of snarls, yelps, human shouts, the splintering of wood, and the clang of metal. The scent of blood, our blood, their blood, but was everywhere, a coppery fog that choked the senses. I dispatched my opponent with a swift, brutal efficiency that surprised even myself, the wolf taking over completely. There was a grim satisfaction in the act, a primal affirmation of survival, but there was no time for triumph. More were trying to force their way in. Marcus's voice, amplified by his alpha form, boomed through the lodge, a rallying cry that cut through the chaos. "Hold the line! Drive them back! Silver Fangs fight!" His own massive, silver-pelted form was a whirlwind of destruction at the main entrance, his fangs tearing through the attackers with terrifying ferocity. We fought shoulder to shoulder, a desperate, snarling wall of fur and fury. The hunters were skilled, armed with silver that bit deep and burned, but they had underestimated the ferocity of a cornered pack defending its home. For every one of us that fell, 2 of them went down, their screams swallowed by the din of battle. Slowly, agonizingly, we began to push them back. The tide turned not with a single heroic act, but with the combined desperate strength of every wolf, from the mightiest warrior to the youngest defender. The breaches in the walls were sealed by snarling bodies. The pressure at the main entrance lessened. Then, as suddenly as it began, the assault faltered. The remaining hunters outside, perhaps realizing the cost of their audacity, began to withdraw. Their shouts became more distant, their scents fainter on the wind. A final, defiant volley of shots peppered the lodge walls, then silence, broken only by the panting breaths of the defenders, the whimpers of the injured, and the crackle of the disturbed central fire. The immediate danger had passed, but the lodge was a wreck. Splintered wood, overturned benches, and the dark, spreading stains of blood marked the floor. The scent of death and lingering human malice hung heavy in the air. I shifted back, the transformation less painful this time, fueled by adrenaline and the receding battle rage. My human limbs felt weak, trembling, my clothes were torn, and I was spattered with blood, some off it mine, from a shallow gash on my forearm, where a silver blade had grazed me. It burned with a cold fire, a constant reminder of our vulnerability. Lyra was already moving among the injured, her calm voice a balm in the aftermath. Several warriors were down, their wounds grievous. Young Torin, the eager one, lay still, his greenwood scent tragically muted, a silver-tipped arrow protruding from his chest. His mate, Myra, was keening over him, a sound of such profound despair it tore at my heart. The pups, huddled in the back, were silent now, their eyes wide and reflecting the horror they had witnessed. Marcus, his human form smeared with dirt and blood, his face a mask of cold fury, surveyed the devastation. The lines around his eyes were no longer just worry. They were deep canyons of grief and rage. "Boren," he barked, his voice raw. "Damage report. How many lost? How many injured?" Boren, nursing a bleeding slash across his shoulder, grimaced. "Torin, he's gone, Alpha. Finnegan and Rel are gravely wounded. Half a dozen others with lesser injuries. We took down at least 10 of theirs, maybe more. They dragged some of their fallen away. 10. A heavy price for them, but Torin, one of our own, lost." The grief was a palpable thing, a cold stone in the chest of the pack. "The perimeter?" Marcus demanded. "They probed from 3 directions," Boren reported. "A coordinated attack. They knew our weak points. They knew the solstice would mean most of us were gathered here. Betrayal? Or just very good scouting on the hunter's part?" The thought sent another shiver down my spine. "They won't be back tonight," Marcus said, though his voice lacked conviction. "But they'll be back." This was different, more organized, bolder. He looked at me then, his gaze heavy. The unspoken question hung in the air. "See, Elara? See why we need allies? See the price of our isolation?" The scent of the north wind, which I had noted before the attack, seemed to cling to the edges of the devastation, a cold, assessing presence. It was as if the very air knew of Kalen's imminent arrival, and the hunter's attack had served as a brutal, bloody herald. Or perhaps, a more chilling thought, perhaps Kalen's scouts had been nearby, had witnessed our vulnerability, and the news was already winging its way north. A pack weakened, desperate, ripe for the claiming. My own small victory against the hunter felt insignificant now, lost in the larger tragedy. The burning pain in my arm was a dull throb compared to the ache in my heart for Torin, for the fear in the pup's eyes, for the precarious future of my pack. Lyra's words echoed in my mind. "Your wolf will know. Trust her." My wolf was still thrumming with the residual fury of the fight, but beneath it, a cold dread was setting in. She knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this attack was not an isolated incident. It was an escalation. The humans were no longer just a nuisance at the borders. They were an existential threat. The next few hours passed in a blur of grim activity. The dead were tended to with solemn ritual. The wounded were moved to Lyra's healing den, a smaller, more sheltered cave connected to the lodge. Sentries were doubled, their senses strained for any sign of the hunter's return. The solstice, meant to be a time of renewal, had become a vigil of fear and mourning. I found myself working alongside Lyra, cleaning wounds, fetching water, my earlier apprehension about the alphas momentarily eclipsed by the immediate, visceral needs of my pack. The scent of blood and pain was a constant assault, but it also focused me, grounded me in the harsh reality of our existence. Lyra worked with a quiet, fierce efficiency, her touch gentle but firm. She offered me a small, sad smile as I helped her bind a deep cut on Silas's leg, the young warrior who had saved me from the silver blade. "You fought well, Elara," she murmured, her eyes holding a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. Pride, perhaps, but also a deeper sorrow. "Your grandmother would have been proud." Her words, meant to comfort, landed like a small stone. My grandmother, the fierce warrior, the one who, according to fading pack lore, had possessed a connection to the moon, a wildness, a power that set her apart, a power that some whispered was a curse, not a blessing, a power I sometimes felt stirring within myself, a strange, unsettling resonance with the primal forces of our world, something beyond the ordinary strength of a shifter. Was that what they wanted? Not just a breeding she-wolf, but something more, something they sensed but couldn't name. As the false dawn began to paint the eastern sky in bruised purples and grays, a new scent cut through the lingering miasma of battle, sharp, clean, and bitingly cold, like the first frost of winter. It was accompanied by the crunch of paws on snow, steady and deliberate, approaching the lodge. Not the furtive sounds of hunters, but something else, something powerful. The sentries at the entrance let out a low, warning growl, but it was answered by a sound that was not a challenge, but an announcement. A single, clear howl, carrying the unmistakable authority of an alpha, yet different from Marcus's. It was a sound that spoke of icy plains, of relentless winds, of ancient, unyielding strength. The north wind had arrived. Marcus, his face grim and streaked with dried blood, straightened from where he'd been conferring with Boren. His own wolfish scent intensified, a silent assertion of his own alpha status, but there was an undeniable tension in his posture. Kaelin, he breathed, the name a puff of white in the frigid air, or his envoy, already. The timing was impeccable or opportunistic. Our pack, wounded, mourning, its defenses breached, its vulnerability laid bare. What better time for a powerful alpha from the north to make his claim, to offer his protection, at a price? I felt a cold dread grip me, far more profound than the fear I'd experienced during the hunter attack. That had been a fight for immediate survival. This was something else. This was the beginning of the bartering, the negotiation for my future, and the future of my pack, played out over the fresh graves of our fallen. My wolf stirred within me, not with aggression this time, but with a deep, wary stillness. She sensed the shift in power, the arrival of a new, dominant force. The scent of Kaelin's pack, carried on that biting wind, was like a blanket of ice settling over the Silverfang territory. It spoke of discipline, of control, of an unyielding will that bent everything to its purpose. There was a purity to it, a chilling beauty, but also a profound lack of warmth, of the messy, sometimes chaotic, but fiercely loyal heart that beat within the Silverfang. The heavy hide flap of the lodge entrance was pulled aside. Two figures stood silhouetted against the pale, pre-dawn light. They were large, even in their human forms, clad in thick, pale furs that seemed to absorb the dim light. Their scent, now that they were closer, was even more potent. The crispness of frozen pine needles, the metallic tang of unshed snow, and the faint, almost sterile scent of extreme cold. It was a scent that promised no quarter, no compromise. One stepped forward. He was taller than Marcus, his build lean but whipcord strong beneath the furs. His hair was the color of winter frost, almost white, and his eyes, when they found mine across the ravaged lodge, were the pale, piercing blue of glacial ice. They held no readable emotion, only an assessing, almost predatory stillness. He was not Kaelin. The alpha scent, though present, was fainter on him, as if carried by proximity. An envoy, then, but one who clearly embodied his alpha's power. His gaze swept the room, taking in the bloodstains, the weary defenders, the grieving she-wolf still hunched over Torin's body. His expression didn't change, but a subtle shift in his scent, a fleeting hint of something that might have been satisfaction, or perhaps just cold calculation, pricked at my senses. He finally spoke, his voice as devoid of warmth as his eyes, carrying clearly in the sudden hush. Alpha Marcus of the Silverfang, I am Malachor, first Fang to Alpha Kaelin of the Nightfrost Pack. He inclined his head, a brief, almost imperceptible movement that was less respect and more a formal acknowledgement. My Alpha sends his condolences for your recent troubles. Condolences. The word was a shard of ice. They knew. They must have been close, watching, waiting. The hunter's attack had been an unwitting overture to their arrival. Malachor's gaze then moved, deliberately, inexorably, until it rested on me. I stood frozen, the blood drying on my skin, the scent of human filth and shifter fear still clinging to me. His pale eyes raked over me, a slow, deliberate assessment that stripped away any pretense of dignity, leaving me feeling exposed, vulnerable, and yet fiercely, defiantly myself. There was a flicker, deep in those icy depths, something that might have been interest, or perhaps just the recognition of a valuable asset. "And you," he continued, his voice a low rumble that seemed to make the very air colder, "must be the she-wolf Elara." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. A claim laid down with the chilling certainty of the north wind itself. "Alpha Kalen has a keen interest in your future, and in the future of the Silver Fang under his protection." The implication was clear, protection offered. A price to be paid, and I was the currency. The north wind hadn't just arrived. It was staking its claim on the very soul of our pack. On the solstice morning that had dawned in blood and fear, my choice, which had seemed so abstract and distant only hours ago, was now a cold, hard reality, personified by the icy envoy standing before me, his gaze a tangible weight, and the scent of the south, of Rorik and his wild, unpredictable fire, seemed to recede, overwhelmed by this sudden, chilling dominion. Chapter 3. A Southern Fire's Scent. Malakor's words, "Alpha Kalen has a keen interest in your future," hung in the frigid air of the ravaged lodge like icicles, sharp and threatening. His pale, glacial eyes remained fixed on me, an unnerving combination of assessment and possession. The scent of the Nightfrost pack, all crisp, sterile cold, and unyielding power, filled the space, a silent declaration of intent. It was a scent that sought to dominate, to bleach out all other fragrances, to impose its will upon our wounded territory. My wolf bristled. The instinct to submit to a superior alpha presence warred with a deeper, more rebellious surge. Kalen's interest, his protection. It sounded like a finely crafted cage, lined with silk, but with bars of unyielding ice. Marcus stepped forward, placing himself subtly between me and the Nightfrost envoy. His own alpha scent, though tinged with weariness and grief, flared with a protective warmth, a shield of earth and old loyalty. "Malakor," he acknowledged, his voice rough but firm. "Your alpha's timing is noteworthy." The unspoken accusation, that Kalen had waited for the scent of our blood to make his approach, was palpable. Malakor's lips, thin and pale, curved into something that might have been a smile if it held any warmth. It was more like the baring of teeth. "Alpha Kalen is ever prescient." He sensed a disturbance on the wind, a weakening. His gaze flickered around the lodge again, a silent emphasis on our weakening. "He offers strength when it is most needed, a shield against those who would see the Silver Fang extinguished." "And the price for this shield?" Boren's voice, a low growl from where he stood, nursing his injured shoulder. His one good eye narrowed, fixed on Malakor with open suspicion. Malakor's gaze shifted to Boren, a flicker of something cold and dismissive in their depths. "Alpha Kalen is generous. He seeks an alliance, a merging of strengths. The Silver Fang territory, though, diminished, holds strategic value. Your southern border abuts the human encroachment. Our northern strength can secure your rear, allowing you to focus your remaining power where it is most needed." He paused, then his eyes slid back to me, lingering. "And of course, such an alliance would be sealed. A bond of blood, a new generation uniting our lines." There it was again, the breeding pact. My stomach churned. I felt like a prize mare being inspected at market, my lineage and potential fertility the only things of value. The heat of my earlier fight, the desperate courage, felt like it was draining away, replaced by a cold, weary anger. Before Marcus could respond, before the suffocating weight of Kalen's implied claim could settle fully, a new element intruded. A subtle shift in the wind, a disturbance at the edge of my senses. It was faint at first, almost lost beneath the dominant scent of the night frost and the lingering stench of battle. But it was there. Warm earth, sun-baked stone, a hint of wild sage, and something else. A vibrant, almost reckless energy, like the crackle of distant lightning before a summer storm. My wolf, who had been tensed and wary under Malacor's icy regard, lifted her head, ears pricked. A low, almost inaudible rumble started deep in her chest. Not a growl of aggression, but one of recognition, intrigue. The change was almost imperceptible to human senses, perhaps, but to us it was a clear signal, another presence, another power. Malachor, too, sensed it. His head tilted slightly, his pale eyes narrowing. A flicker of annoyance, quickly suppressed, crossed his features. He had expected to dominate this exchange, to find the Silver Fang cowed and receptive. This new arrival was an unwelcome complication. The sounds from outside were different now, not the heavy, deliberate crunch of the Nightfrost warrior's paws, but a lighter, more agile movement. And then a howl. Not the clear, authoritative pronouncement of Kalen's envoy, nor the mournful cry of a Silver Fang. This was a sound that seemed to dance on the wind, wild and untamed, laced with a defiant joy that was utterly out of place in our ravaged, grieving lodge. It was a howl that spoke of open spaces, of exhilarating chases under a blazing sun, of a spirit that refused to be bound. The southern fire, Rorik, or his envoy. Marcus's expression shifted, a complex mix of apprehension and something else. Perhaps a grudging respect, or maybe just the weariness of a leader caught between two powerful, demanding forces. "It seems," he said, his voice dry, "the solstice brings many visitors." The hide flap was thrust aside with a flourish, not pulled with the night frost's deliberate gravity. 3 figures entered, smaller in stature than Malachor and his silent companion, but radiating an energy that was twice as potent. They were clad in lighter leathers, dyed in earthy tones of ochre and russet, their movements fluid and quick like desert cats. Their scent flooded the lodge, a vibrant contrast to the night frost's icy perfume. It was warm, spicy, with an undercurrent of something ancient and untamed, like the smell of a dust storm gathering strength, or the deep, resonant hum of the earth itself. The foremost of the 3 stepped forward. She was a she-wolf, her human form lithe and muscular, her hair the color of sun-bleached straw, braided with small, polished stones that glinted in the dim light. Her eyes were a startling amber, bright and intelligent, and they danced with a fierce, almost mischievous light as she surveyed the scene. Unlike Malachor, her expression was open, readable, and currently held a mixture of sympathy for our losses and a bold, unapologetic confidence. "Alpha Marcus of the Silver Fang," she said, her voice rich and melodic, like water flowing over warm stones. It held none of Malachor's chilling formality. "I am Lyra. No, forgive me," she corrected herself with a quick, self-deprecating smile, her gaze flicking briefly to our own healer, Lyra, who watched her with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "Common name, it seems. I am, let's say, Leona. First scout to Alpha Rorik of the Sunstone Pack." She dipped her head in a gesture of respect that felt genuine, not perfunctory. "My Alpha sends his deepest regrets for your losses. We scented the human filth on the wind. A cowardly attack under the cloak of the solstice night." Her amber eyes flicked to Malachor, and the playful light within them sharpened, became assessingly keen. "And it seems we are not the only ones to offer condolences." The emphasis on the word was subtle, but her scent carried a clear challenge, a spark of defiance against the night frost's oppressive aura. Malachor's pale eyes narrowed further. The air between the 2 envoys crackled with an unspoken animosity, the elemental clash of ice and fire. His scent sharpened, the cold intensifying, a silent assertion of dominance. Leona, however, seemed unperturbed, her own scent flaring with a warm, vibrant confidence, like sunlight on stone. "Alpha Rorik also offers his strength," Leona continued, her gaze returning to Marcus. "Not as a conqueror, but as an ally. We Sunstone are not as numerous as the Nightfrost, perhaps," she said with a pointed glance at Malachor, who remained impassive. "But we know the ways of the humans. We have fought them on their own terms, in the canyons and the sun-scorched plains. We know their tactics, their weaknesses. An alliance with us would bring fire to fight fire. Fire to fight fire. The words resonated deep within me, stirring something primal. My wolf, who had recoiled from Kalen's icy promise of control, seemed to lean into the sunstone's warmer, more volatile energy. There was danger in it, yes. The scent of wildfire was unpredictable, capable of consuming everything in its path. But there was also life, passion, a refusal to simply endure. I risked a glance at Elara. Her expression was thoughtful, her wise eyes moving between Malachor and Leona, weighing their words, their sense, their very essence. She caught my eye and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Not of agreement with either, but perhaps of acknowledgement. Acknowledgement of the complexity, the danger, and the glimmer of hope that this new arrival represented. Marcus drew a slow breath, the sense of his two uninvited guests warring in his council lodge. "Your Alpha Rorik is known for his directness," he said, choosing his words carefully. The unspoken word was recklessness. Leona grinned, a flash of white teeth. "Rorik believes that a serpent is best dealt with by a swift strike to the head, not by cautious circling. The humans are a serpent, their fangs dripping with silver venom. They will not be appeased by territory ceded or by defensive postures. They must be driven back, made to fear." Her amber eyes glowed with conviction. Her words were a stark contrast to Malachor's talk of strategic defense and sealed northern borders. Kalen offered a fortress of ice. Rorik offered a cleansing fire. "And what is Alpha Rorik's price for this fiery assistance?" Bourne interjected again, his skepticism evident. He was an old warrior, wary of grand pronouncements and quick alliances. Leona turned to him, her gaze direct and unflinching. "Rorik seeks true partnership. Shared hunts, shared patrols, shared victories. He does not seek to absorb the Silver Fang, but to strengthen us, and in turn, be strengthened. Our southern lands are vast, but our numbers are concentrated. Your knowledge of these forests, your pack's resilience." She paused, and then, like Malachor before her gaze found me, but her assessment felt different. Less like an inventory of assets, more like a flicker of recognition. Her eyes, those startling amber flames, seemed to see something beyond the unmated she-wolf, something deeper. "And yes," she said, her voice softening slightly, a hint of something almost conspiratorial in her tone. "Alpha Rorik is aware of Elara. He too believes that the strongest alliances are forged not just by treaty, but by heart, by a bond that transcends politics." She didn't explicitly say mate bond, but the implication was there, warmer, less like a transaction than Malachor's cold pronouncement. Her scent carried a hint of something ancient, something tied to the very prophecies Marcus had mentioned clung to Rorik's bloodline. My heart, which had been a cold knot of dread, gave a strange, uncertain flutter. Heart, not just lineage, not just a womb to carry the next generation. The Sunstone envoy spoke of a bond, a partnership. It was still an arranged alliance, still a choice forced upon me by circumstance, but the flavor of it was profoundly different. Malachor made a soft, derisive sound, a faint hiss of escaping air, like steam from freezing ice. "Sentimentality has little place in survival, Sunstone Scout. Strength, discipline, unwavering order. These are the foundations of a lasting pack. Alpha Kalen offers these. What does your fiery Alpha offer beyond reckless charges and pretty words about heart?" Leona's amber eyes flashed. "He offers courage, Night Frost. The courage to fight for what is ours, not just cower behind walls of ice. He offers a spirit that cannot be broken. And he understands that true strength comes not just from numbers, but from the fire within each wolf, from the bonds of loyalty freely given, not demanded." Her gaze swept over the grieving Silver Fangs, lingering on Myra, still silently mourning Torin. "He understands loss, and he understands the need for vengeance. Vengeance." The word resonated with the raw grief in the lodge. Torin's lifeless form was a stark testament to the need for it. The hunters had struck a deep blow, and the desire for retribution was a burning coal in many hearts, including my own. Kaelin's offer was of cold, calculated security. Rorik's was of passionate, active resistance. I looked from Malicor's impassive, icy face to Leona's expressive, fiery one. Two alphas, two paths. One promising a carefully constructed, chillingly secure future, the other a volatile, dangerous, but perhaps more vital one. Neither of them knew the truth I carried, the secret that thrummed beneath my skin, the potential for destruction that my grandmother's legacy hinted at. I might be the end of them both. The thought was a cold whisper against the heat of Leona's words. Marcus cleared his throat, drawing the attention of both envoys. The lines of strain on his face were profound. He looked like a man caught between a glacier and a volcano. "Your alphas honor us with their proposals," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "The Silver Fang Pack is grateful for your concern and your offers of aid. We have suffered a grievous blow. We need time to mourn our dead, to tend our wounded, to consider." "Consider?" Malicor's voice was edged with impatience. "The human threat is not considerate, Alpha Marcus. Delay only invites further aggression. Alpha Kaelin expects a swift decision. His patience, while considerable, is not infinite." His gaze was a warning. Leona, however, nodded slowly. "Alpha Rorik understands the weight of such choices. He does not press, but he urges you not to let grief cloud your judgment, or fear dictate your path. The fire of the sunstone burns brightest when hope seems lost." She looked directly at me again, a spark of something warm and encouraging in her amber eyes. "Listen to your heart, Elara, and to your wolf they will not lead you astray." Her words, so similar to Lyra's, struck a chord. Trust your wolf, my wolf, who had recoiled from the night frost's chilling control, felt a strange pull towards the sunstone's vibrant energy, a dangerous, exhilarating allure. It was the call of the wild, the promise of a fight fought on her own terms. Yet there was a deep-seated caution too. Fire could warm, but it could also consume. 3 nights, Marcus declared, his voice gaining a new firmness. As was originally anticipated for discussion, the standing stones, under the wane of the solstice moon, both your alphas, if they wish to present their proposals directly, will be met there. Until then, your envoys are guests on Silverfang land, though our hospitality will be strained by our current circumstances. He did not offer them shelter within the Great Lodge, a subtle but clear indication of his own strained neutrality and the pack's raw state. Malicor inclined his head, a stiff, formal gesture. Alpha Kaelin will be informed. His sense still carried that chilling certainty, the belief that his alpha's offer was the only logical choice. He and his silent companion turned and departed, their movements economical and precise, melting back into the gray morning like phantoms of the frost. The oppressive cold they brought with them seemed to linger in their wake. Leona, however, lingered a moment longer. Her amber gaze swept over me one last time, a look that was both searching and strangely knowing. "The wind carries many scents, Elara of the Silver Fang," she murmured, her voice too low for Marcus or Boren to hear. "Some of cold ambition, some of desperate hope, and some, Paul, of secrets yet to be awakened." She gave a small enigmatic smile. "Rorik is drawn to the scent of the wild moon. He will be eager to meet the wolf who carries its echo." With that cryptic pronouncement, she and her 2 companions turned and left, their departure as swift and fluid as their arrival. The scent of warm earth and wild sage faded, leaving behind a confusing tapestry of emotions in the lodge: grief, fear, anger, and now a bewildering new tension. The choice, which had been a terrifying abstract, now had faces, scents, and conflicting promises. Kaelin, the northern ice, offering cold security at the price of submission. Rorik, the southern fire, offering a dangerous alliance fueled by passion and prophecy. Both wanted me. Both believed they held the key to the Silver Fang's survival, and perhaps, to their own ambitions, and I, Elara, stood in the heart of it, the solstice burden heavier than ever. My wolf paced, agitated, drawn and repelled by both forces, but beneath her confusion that other deeper instinct stirred, the whisper of my grandmother's legacy, the shadow of a power I didn't understand but knew was part of me. Leona's parting words echoed, secrets yet to be awakened. The wolf who carries its echo. What did she mean? What did Rorik sense in me? And what would happen when these two powerful alphas, ice and fire, finally met, with me as the fulcrum upon which their ambitions, and the fate of my pack, would turn? The snow outside was already stained with blood. I had a chilling premonition that much more would fall before the solstice week was over. Chapter 4. Silver Shadows, Crimson Snow. The departure of the Sunstone envoy left a strange vacuum in the Great Lodge, a momentary lull in the storm of events that had engulfed us. The oppressive chill of Malakor's presence had been potent, but Leona's vibrant energy, her talk of fire and heart, had introduced a confusing countercurrent. Now, with both gone, only the heavy pall of grief, fear, and the grim reality of our situation remained. The sense of blood, burnt wood, and human malice still clung to the air, a constant acrid reminder of the night's horrors. Marcus wasted no time. Boren doubled the patrols, especially on the southern and eastern borders. I want eyes on every approach. If those hunters or any other uninvited guests show their snouts, I want to know immediately. Lyra, tend to the wounded. Prioritize Finnegan and Rel. Their lives hang by a thread. His voice was hard, stripped of all but grim necessity. The alpha, shouldering the immense weight of his pack's survival. The pups, he continued, his gaze softening for a fraction of a second as he looked towards the huddled, terrified younglings, being comforted by the older she-wolves. Keep them close. Keep them safe. This is not a world for innocence. I felt a pang of something akin to despair. He was right. The world we inhabited was stripping away innocence layer by layer, replacing it with harsh truths and the constant threat of violence. My own supposed transition into a prize to be bartered felt like the ultimate loss of any remaining innocence I might have clung to. My arm throbbed where the silver blade had grazed me. It wasn't a deep wound, but the silver left a peculiar, cold burn that seeped into the bone. A persistent poison. Lyra, despite her overwhelming duties, had insisted on cleaning it thoroughly with a poultice of moon petal and river clay, her touch surprisingly gentle. Silver scars run deep, Elara, she'd murmured, her eyes troubled. Not just in the flesh, but in the spirit. As the grim tasks of the morning unfolded, repairing the breaches in the lodge walls, clearing the debris, preparing Torrin's body for the final rites, I found myself moving with a numb efficiency. My wolf was subdued, watchful. The dramatic arrivals of the two envoys had stirred her, but the underlying threat, the hunters who had so brazenly attacked our sanctuary, remained her primary focus. They will return, she whispered in the back of my mind. A constant low thrum of anxiety. They tasted our blood. They will want more. The lodge, usually a place of warmth and community, felt violated, haunted. Every shadow seemed to conceal a lurking hunter. Every gust of wind carried the phantom scent of their cold iron and hatred. The pack's morale was low, a fragile thing held together by Marcus's unwavering resolve and Lyra's quiet strength. The prospect of choosing between two powerful, potentially domineering alphas, even if it promised survival, felt less like a solution and more like another form of subjugation. Later, as the weak winter sun struggled to pierce the heavy cloud cover, Marcus called me to his side. We stood near the edge of the clearing just outside the lodge, the snow underfoot stained in several places, with dark, frozen patches of blood, grim markers of the night's battle. The air was still, heavy, amplifying the silence of the surrounding forest. Elara, he began, his voice softer than it had been, tinged with exhaustion. You heard them. Kaelin of the Night Frost, Rorik of the Sunstone. He didn't look at me, his gaze fixed on the dark tree line. Ice and fire, two dangerous propositions. What do you truly think, Marcus? I asked, needing his honest assessment, not just the alpha's decree. Beyond the strategic advantages. He sighed, a plume of white mist in the cold air. Kalen is a known quantity in a way. His pack is ancient, his rule absolute. He is ruthless, yes, but he is also a builder, a preserver. The Nightfrost territory is harsh, unforgiving, yet his pack thrives because of his iron will. An alliance with him. It would be a cage, perhaps, but a strong one. We would be absorbed, our Silverfang identity diluted, but we would likely survive. He would crush the Blackwood. He would fortify our borders against the humans. His scent carried a grudging respect for Kalen's brutal efficiency. And Rorik? Marcus's brow furrowed. Rorik is an enigma. His bloodline is old, older even than Kalen's, they say, touched by the first wolves. The prophecies that follow him. Some speak of a great uniter, others of a great destroyer. He is young, impulsive, and his pack, while fierce, is not as numerous or as organized as the Nightfrost. He finally turned to look at me, his winter twilight eyes troubled. His envoy spoke of heart, of partnership. Those are appealing words, Elara, especially now, but fire, as she said, can also consume. An alliance with Rorik. It could be the spark that ignites a greater war with the humans, one we are not prepared for. Or it could draw us into his own conflicts, his own fated path, whatever that may be. His words painted a stark picture, a choice between slow assimilation into a cold, orderly existence, or a wild, uncertain gamble on a fiery, unpredictable future. Neither felt right. Neither felt like me. Leona, the Sunstone Scout, I said slowly, remembering her parting words. She said Rorik is drawn to the scent of the wild moon, that he would be eager to meet the wolf who carries its echo. I watched Marcus's face carefully. What did she mean? Marcus's expression became guarded. He looked away again towards the ancient, silent trees. Old tales, Elara, pack lore, your grandmother. She was different. It was said she could hear the moon speak, that her wolf ran with a wildness that bordered on the untamable. Some revered her for it. Others feared her. He paused. Rorik's lineage is said to be sensitive to such echoes, to those who carry a deeper connection to the primal magic of our kind. A shiver traced my spine, despite the heavy furs I wore. Primal magic, the wild moon, these were not words commonly spoken. They hinted at something ancient, something powerful, something dangerous. Was this the secret I carried? This echo of my grandmother's untamable spirit? Was this what both alphas truly sensed in me, beneath the veneer of the unmated she-wolf? Not just a womb, but a weapon, or a key? This echo, I pressed. Is it why they want me? More than just for an alliance? Marcus ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. Perhaps. Power attracts power, Elara. Kalen might see it as something to be controlled, harnessed for his own ends. Rorik. He might see it as something to be unleashed, a kindred spirit, or perhaps even a tool for fulfilling these prophecies that cling to him. He shook his head. I don't know. I only know that your position is more perilous and perhaps more pivotal than even I first realized. Perilous, pivotal. The words echoed the weight I felt settling on my shoulders. The hunter's attack had been a brutal awakening, but this subtle undercurrent of ancient power and hidden agendas, felt like a deeper, more insidious current pulling me towards an unknown fate. The day wore on, each hour thick with tension. We buried Torin as the sun began its descent. A small, solemn gathering at the edge of the sacred grove where the oldest Silverfangs rested. Myra's quiet sobs were the only sound that broke the heavy silence, a counterpoint to the mournful sigh of the wind in the pines. The scent of freshly turned earth, cold and damp, mingled with the lingering grief. As we turned to leave, I saw it, a flicker of movement at the edge of the woods, a pale shape that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Malachor, or another Nightfrost scout, watching, assessing, Their presence was a constant, chilling reminder of Kaylin's claim. Later, as darkness fully enveloped the forest, Lyra approached me. She carried a small, carved wooden box. "Your grandmother asked me to give this to you, Elara," she said, her voice soft. "When the time was right, when you faced a choice that would define your path." She pressed the cool, smooth wood into my hand. "I believe that time is now." My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay an amulet. It was a single, unpolished shard of what looked like obsidian, shot through with veins of a deep, luminous blue that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light from the lodge. It was cold to the touch, yet a strange, faint warmth pulsed from its depths, a subtle thrum that resonated with the wolf within me. It was suspended on a simple leather thong. "What is it?" I whispered, awestruck by its raw, untamed beauty. "Moonstone," Lyra said. "Or so your grandmother called it. Not the pale, common kind. This is different." She said it fell from the sky, a tear of the moon goddess herself, found in the heart of a lightning-struck ancient oak generations ago. She said it holds an echo of the first wolves, of the primal magic. Her eyes searched mine. She wore it always. She said it helped her listen. Listen to the moon, to her wolf, to the whispers of that ancient power. I lifted the amulet from the box as my fingers closed around the stone. A faint jolt, like static electricity, shot up my arm. My wolf stirred, a deep sense of recognition, of homecoming, washing through her. The stone felt alive. It pulsed with a faint rhythmic beat, like a tiny captured heart. The luminous blue veins within it seemed to swirl, to deepen. "She said it would protect you, Lyra continued, "and guide you. But she also warned, it magnifies. What is within you, good or ill, it will make stronger. The wildness, the connection, it can be a gift, Elara, or a curse. It depends on the heart that wields it." I looked down at the moonstone, feeling its strange ancient power thrumming against my skin. A gift or a curse. My grandmother's legacy. Another layer of complexity. Another burden. Another potential weapon in the dangerous game I was forced to play. The night deepened. The patrol's Bourne had set moved like shadows through the forest. The lodge was quiet. An exhausted, fearful quiet. I sat by the dying embers of the central fire, the moonstone clutched in my hand. Its faint warmth was a small comfort against the chill of my thoughts. Kaylin's cold ambition, Rorik's fiery enigma, the ever-present threat of the hunters. And now this amulet, this tangible link to a power I was only beginning to comprehend. Sleep was impossible. My senses were too acute, my wolf too restless. She paced the borders of my consciousness, sniffing the wind, listening for any sound that might signal danger. The scents of the two rival alphas, though their envoys were gone, seemed to have imprinted themselves on our territory. The icy tang of the north, the smoky heat of the south, overlaying our own familiar silver fang scent. It was well past the deepest part of the night when I heard it. Not a howl, not a footstep, but a subtle shift in the air currents around the lodge, a disturbance in the pattern of scents. My wolf went instantly alert, a low growl vibrating in my chest. I rose silently, the moonstone clutched tight, its faint thrum a steady beat against my palm. Moving with a stealth I hadn't known I possessed, I slipped out of the great lodge, melting into the shadows at the edge of the clearing. The weak moonlight filtered through the clouds, casting an eerie silver glow on the snow-covered ground. The forest was a tapestry of black and gray, silent and watchful. Then I saw them. Not the bold, confident approach of the night frost or sunstone envoys. These were shadows, flitting between the trees, low to the ground. Their scent, when it finally reached me, was unmistakable. Human, but not just any humans. This was the specific, acrid blend of stale sweat, iron, chemical accelerants, and that cold, fanatical hatred that I had come to associate with the hunters who had attacked us. And silver, the sharp, clean, deadly scent of silver. They were back. And they weren't just probing this time. They moved with a grim, silent purpose, fanning out, their movements coordinated. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a raid. This felt like an encirclement. There were more of them than before, at least a dozen that I could scent, perhaps more hidden deeper in the woods. They carried long, dark rifles, and glints of silver, arrows, blades, were visible even in the dim light. They were setting up positions, strategic, methodical, aiming for the lodge, aiming for the heart of the pack. Panic, cold and sharp, threatened to overwhelm me. We were still wounded, still grieving. Our patrols were out, yes, but were they prepared for this scale of attack? This silent, creeping death? The moonstone in my hand suddenly felt intensely hot, almost burning. The blue veins within it pulsed with a fierce, urgent light. My wolf snarled, a wave of protective fury washing through me, so potent it almost buckled my knees. Protect the pack, warn them. But how? If I howled, I'd give away my position and theirs. They were too close, too many. A direct confrontation from me alone would be suicide. Then I saw it. A small group of them, 3 figures detaching from the main line, moving stealthily towards the smaller, sheltered cave that served as Lyra's healing den, where Finnegan and Rel, our most grievously wounded, lay helpless, where the pups were often taken for comfort. A cold, murderous rage, unlike anything I had ever experienced, seized me. It was not just the protective instinct of the wolf. It was something deeper, something that resonated with the burning heat of the moonstone in my hand. They were going after the weakest, the most vulnerable, an unforgivable act. There was no time for thought, no time for a plan. Only a burning, absolute certainty. They would not reach that den. The moonstone pulsed, and a strange energy surged through me, not the familiar rush of the shift, but something else, a heightening of senses beyond even my wolf's keenness. The world sharpened, sounds became incredibly distinct, scents almost overwhelmingly vivid. I could feel the cold of the snow seeping into the leather of my boots, the faint tremor of the earth beneath my feet, the individual heartbeats of the hunters as they crept closer, and I felt a connection to the shadows, to the cold night air, to the silent, watchful trees. I didn't consciously decide to move. One moment I was pressed against the rough bark of an ancient pine. The next I was flowing through the darkness like a river of shadow, silent, unseen. My human form felt different, lighter, faster, imbued with a predatory grace I hadn't known I possessed. The moonstone blazed against my palm, a beacon of cold fire. I intercepted the 3 hunters just as they reached the low entrance to the healing den. They never saw me coming. One moment they were advancing, confident in their stealth. The next, a blur of motion erupted from the darkness. I moved with a speed and precision that was not entirely my own. The first hunter went down with a choked gasp, a dark shape collapsing silently onto the snow. The second whirled, raising his rifle, but my hand, strengthened by that strange energy, shot out, deflecting the barrel. The scent of his fear was a sudden, sharp spike in the air. Before he could cry out, I struck again. The third, seeing his companions fall, tried to shout a warning, but his voice was cut off as I closed the distance. There was no snarling, no wolfish rage in my attack, just a cold, silent, terrifyingly efficient dispatch. The moonstone in my hand felt like an extension of my will, a conduit for a power that was both exhilarating and terrifying. 3 bodies lay silent in the snow, their dark blood blooming like grotesque flowers on the white canvas. I stood over them, panting, the strange energy slowly receding, leaving me trembling and disoriented. My hands were sticky with their blood. The scent of death, up close and personal, filled my nostrils. What had I just done? How had I moved like that? It wasn't a full shift, but it wasn't entirely human either. It was something else, something empowered by the moonstone, something terrifyingly effective. A new sound cut through the night, a single sharp whistle from the direction of the main hunter force. They had realized their forward scouts were overdue. Or perhaps they had heard something, despite my silence. The element of surprise was gone. The crimson snow at my feet was a stark testament to my actions. I had bought Lyra and the wounded a few precious moments, but the main attack was surely imminent. I had to warn the pack. I threw back my head, and this time I did howl. Not a cry of alarm, but a call to arms, a sound infused with the desperate fury of the night, laced with the strange, ancient power that still thrummed through my veins from the moonstone. It was a howl that ripped through the silent forest, a declaration of defiance. The silver fang would not fall without a fight. And I, Elara, the bartered prize, the echo of the wild moon, had just drawn first blood. The real battle for the solstice night had just begun. Chapter 5. Between Two Hearts, One Fate. My howl, raw and laced with the moonstone's strange power, tore through the oppressive silence of the forest. A desperate, clarion call. It was answered almost instantly by the deeper, more resonant roars of Marcus and Boren, followed by the chorus of an awakening, enraged pack. The night, which had been creeping with silent, shadowy menace, exploded into a cacophony of snarls, shouts, and the unmistakable thrum of multiple shifters embracing the change. The hunters, their stealthy encirclement broken by my preemptive strike and subsequent alarm, reacted with brutal efficiency. A volley of shots erupted from the tree line, the distinctive crack of their rifles spitting silver-laced death towards the great lodge. I saw flashes of muzzle fire, heard the whistle of projectiles slicing through the air, the sickening thud as some found their mark against the log walls. There was no time for reflection on the strange power that had flowed through me, no time to question the cold efficiency with which I'd dispatched the 3 hunters near Lyra's den. The immediate, overwhelming imperative was survival. My pack was under siege. I shifted, the change coming faster this time, fueled by adrenaline and the lingering thrum of the moonstone, which I'd instinctively tucked back into the pouch at my belt before the transformation fully took me. Its presence was a comforting weight, a silent promise of hidden strength. My wolf form felt different, more potent. My senses were sharper, my muscles coiling with a readiness that felt amplified. The world was a vivid tapestry of scents and sounds, every detail magnified, every threat precisely located. The main body of hunters was concentrating their fire on the lodge, clearly intending to pin the pack down, perhaps hoping to set the structure ablaze with their chemical accelerants. Their discipline was chilling. This was no random raid. This was a planned, methodical assault. The memory of their earlier success, breaching the walls, clearly emboldened them. But the Silver Fang were not unprepared this time. Marcus's orders had been clear. Patrols, though perhaps initially surprised by the scale and silence of this new attack, were already engaging the enemy at the perimeter. I heard the distinct sounds of fighting erupting from multiple points in the woods. The snarls of our warriors, the yelps of pain, both shifter and human. The clash of claw and blade against the hunter's crude armor. My own path was clear. The hunters I dealt with had been a detached unit, targeting the vulnerable. The main force was still a significant threat. I couldn't take them all on, but I could disrupt them, harass their flanks, create openings for my packmates. I moved like a gray ghost through the undergrowth, using the shadows and the terrain to my advantage. The moonstone's influence, even now, seemed to enhance my natural stealth, allowing me to slip past hunter positions unseen, unheard. Their scent was a nauseating miasma. Fear, sweat, gunpowder, and that cold, unwavering hatred. They were numerous, more than I'd initially estimated, perhaps 15 or 20, a formidable force for our already depleted pack. I spotted a pair of hunters setting up a crude tripod, aiming what looked like a larger, heavier weapon towards the lodge, perhaps something designed to launch flaming projectiles. They were focused, intent on their task, their backs momentarily vulnerable. This was my hands. With a burst of speed, I erupted from the shadows, a silent arrow of gray fur and fury. I took down the closer one before he could even register my presence, my jaws closing on his exposed neck with lethal precision. The second whirled, raising his rifle, but he was too slow. I slammed into him, sending him sprawling, the heavy weapon discharging harmlessly into the night sky. A brief, brutal struggle, and he too lay still. I didn't linger. 2 more down. The odds were still against us, but every enemy felled was a small victory, a breath of hope. The sounds of the main battle were intensifying. I could hear Marcus's thunderous roars, Boren's savage snarls, the desperate courage of the Silver Fang warriors as they met the human onslaught. The scent of shifter blood, sharp and metallic, mingled with the cruder, oilier scent of human blood, creating a sickening perfume of war. I continued my deadly dance along the enemy's flank, striking and fading back into the darkness. I was not a frontline brawler like Boren, nor did I possess Marcus's overwhelming alpha power. My strength lay in speed, stealth, and a burgeoning, ruthless cunning that the Moonstone seemed to awaken within me. I targeted isolated groups, picked off stragglers, sowed confusion and fear in their ranks. Once a silver-tipped arrow hissed past my ear, so close I felt the cold breath of its passage. I whirled, spotting the archer perched in the low branches of an ancient oak. Before he could knock another arrow, I launched myself upwards, my claws finding purchase on the rough bark, scrambling up the trunk with unnatural speed. He stared, eyes wide with disbelief, as a snarling wolf materialized before him in the branches. His scream was cut short. But the hunters were relentless. They were well-armed, disciplined, and fighting with a fanaticism that was terrifying. For everyone I took down, it seemed 2 more appeared. I saw flashes of silver nets, designed to entangle and immobilize. I heard the chilling hiss of gas grenades, their acrid fumes designed to choke and disorient. They were using tactics we hadn't encountered before, tactics that spoke of careful planning and a deep understanding of our weaknesses. My own pack was fighting with the desperate courage of cornered wolves, but we were taking losses. I heard yelps of agony that were abruptly silenced, saw familiar gray forms stumble and fall, the scent of their lifeblood staining the snow. Each loss was a fresh stab of pain, fueling my rage, hardening my resolve. The battle raged for what felt like an eternity, the longest night stretching into an endless nightmare. The initial chaos had settled into a brutal, grinding stalemate. The hunters couldn't fully breach our defenses around the lodge, but we couldn't drive them off either. They were too numerous, too well entrenched. Then, through the din of battle, a new scent cut through the air, carried on a sudden gust of wind from the north. Cold, incredibly cold, sharper and more focused than the ambient winter air. It was the scent of the night frost pack, stronger this time, closer, much closer. My heart leaped. Kalen? Had he come? Was this the protection his envoy had spoken of? An intervention, or an opportunistic arrival, ready to pick over the bones of whichever side was left standing? Almost simultaneously, another scent arrived, this one from the south, carried on a warmer, more turbulent breeze. Wild sage, sun-baked earth, and that distinct, untamed musk of the Sunstone pack. Rorik. He too was near. The hunters seemed to sense it as well. A subtle shift in their formation, a nervous energy that hadn't been there before. Their attention, which had been solely focused on the Silver Fang, now seemed divided, their heads turning towards the north and south, their confident aggression tinged with a new uncertainty. The forest, which had been echoing with the sounds of our desperate battle, suddenly fell into a strange, expectant hush. Even the gunfire seemed to lessen, as if all parties were holding their breath. Into this sudden, tense silence, 2 distinct howls ripped through the night almost simultaneously. From the north, a howl of pure, unadulterated authority, cold, clear, and utterly commanding. It was a sound that brooked no argument, a declaration of absolute power. It resonated with the chilling certainty I'd scented on Malachor, magnified 100-fold. Kalen of the Nightfrost had arrived. From the south, a howl that was its antithesis, wild, fiery, and laced with an almost joyous ferocity. It was a sound that danced on the wind, a challenge and a promise, a raw, untamed energy that seemed to set the very air vibrating. Rorik of the Sunstone was here. The effect on the hunters was immediate and profound. Their discipline, which had been so formidable, fractured. The scent of their fear, previously masked by aggression, now flooded the air, sharp and sour. They were caught between 3 werewolf packs, one they were already engaged with, and 2 more, led by alphas of legendary power, converging on their position. Their well-laid plans were unraveling. I saw several hunters break ranks, their eyes wide with terror, looking for an escape route. Their officers shouted orders, trying to maintain control, but the primal fear of 2 alpha predators bearing down on them was too much. Then the forest erupted. From the north, a wave of pale gray and white forms materialized from the shadows, moving with a silent, terrifying coordination. The Night Frost warriors. They were larger than our silver fangs, their fur thick against the cold, their eyes gleaming with icy resolve. They moved like a well-oiled machine, each wolf knowing its place, their attack precise and devastating. Malachor was among them, his glacial eyes fixed on the fleeing hunters, a grim satisfaction on his face. And at their head, a figure of breathtaking power, an alpha whose presence was a physical force, radiating an aura of absolute chilling control. Kalen. His fur was the color of a winter storm cloud, his eyes twin shards of sapphire ice. He moved with a terrible, majestic grace, and where he passed, the hunters simply ceased to be. From the south, a contrasting storm, russet and ochre shapes, smaller than the Night Frost, but moving with a fluid, unpredictable agility. The Sunstone warriors. They flowed through the trees like a wildfire, their attacks swift, ferocious, and seemingly chaotic, yet devastatingly effective. Leona was at the forefront, her amber eyes blazing, a fierce grin on her face as she tore into the enemy ranks. And leading them, an alpha who was the embodiment of the untamed South, Rorik. His fur was the color of rich, sun-warmed earth, his eyes like molten gold. He moved with a raw, explosive energy, a force of nature unleashed, his roars a challenge to the very sky. The hunters were caught in a pincer movement of epic proportions. Their organized assault on the Silver Fang devolved into a panicked, desperate rout. They were no match for the combined fury of 3 werewolf packs, 2 of them led by alphas of immense power and reputation. I watched, momentarily stunned by the sheer scale and ferocity of the intervention. My own small, desperate fight seemed insignificant in the face of this overwhelming display of power. The Silver Fang warriors, sensing the tide turn so dramatically, rallied with renewed vigor, pressing their advantage, driving the remaining hunters into the jaws of the Night Frost and Sunstone warriors. The battle, which had been a desperate struggle for survival, became a slaughter. The hunters who had come so confidently to exterminate us were now the prey. Their screams echoed through the forest, quickly silenced. The scent of their blood, thick and cloying, overwhelmed all other fragrances. It was over almost as quickly as it had begun. The forest fell silent once more, a silence broken only by the panting breaths of the victorious shifters and the soft whimpering sounds of dying humans. Kalen of the Night Frost stood amidst the carnage, his icy gaze sweeping the battlefield, his expression unreadable. His warriors were already moving with chilling efficiency, dispatching any remaining wounded hunters, their movements precise, economical, devoid of passion. It was a cleanup operation, conducted with the detached professionalism of an execution squad. Rorik of the Sunstone, in contrast, threw back his head and let out a triumphant howl, a sound of pure, unadulterated victory that seemed to shake the very trees. His warriors echoed him, their howls a wild, joyful chorus. He was spattered with blood, his golden eyes blazing with a fierce, almost feral light. He looked magnificent and terrifying. Marcus, his form still bearing the marks of the desperate battle, approached the 2 alphas, his posture wary but resolute. The Silver Fang pack, battered and bleeding but alive, gathered behind him. I joined them, my own weariness profound, my wolf still thrumming with the residual adrenaline of the fight and the strange energy of the moonstone. Alpha Kalen, Alpha Rorik, Marcus said, his voice hoarse. The Silver Fang pack owes you a debt. Kalen inclined his head, a gesture as cold and minimal as his envoy's. The debt can be discussed, Alpha Marcus. Your territory has proven vulnerable. My offer of protection stands. His sapphire eyes flicked towards me, a brief, possessive gleam. Rorik, however, grinned, a flash of white teeth in his bloodied muzzle. He shook his head, sending droplets of crimson spraying onto the snow. No debt, Marcus of Silverfang. We fight a common enemy. Today we fought together. That is how it should be. His molten gold eyes then found mine, and they held a warmth, an intensity, that was both unnerving and strangely compelling. He, too, had noted my presence, but his regard felt different from Kalen's, less like an appraisal of an asset, more like a recognition. The echo Leona had spoken of. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Two powerful alphas, saviors of the moment, but also rivals, their conflicting natures and ambitions now laid bare on the blood-soaked snow. They had saved the Silverfang, yes, but in doing so they had also staked their claims more firmly than ever. My choice, which had seemed so difficult before, now felt utterly impossible. Ice and fire, control and chaos. Both had demonstrated their power, their ability to protect. Both had also revealed the starkness of their contrasting natures. Kalen's gaze was a silent promise of order, of strength, of a world where every wolf knew its place, under his unyielding rule. His scent was a clean, cold dominion. Rorik's gaze was a spark, a challenge, a promise of a wilder, more passionate existence, where strength came from spirit and alliances were forged in shared battle and common purpose. His scent was a vibrant, untamed energy. Between them, I stood, Elara of the Silverfang, the unmated she-wolf, the prize, the echo of the wild moon. My heart, a confused and battered thing, felt pulled in two opposing directions, and my wolf, deeply instinctual, recognized a profound truth. My fate, and the fate of my pack, was now inextricably bound to these two formidable alphas. The crimson snow beneath our paws was a testament to the dangers we faced, but it was also, perhaps, a portent of the bloody path that lay ahead, regardless of which heart, which alpha I ultimately chose. One fate, it seemed, was now tied to two very different destinies. Chapter 6. The Price of Defiance. The immediate aftermath of the hunter slaughter was a grim tableau under the weak, bruised light of the false dawn. The sense of blood, both human and shifter, hung heavy and sickening in the air, a visceral perfume of victory and loss. Kalen's Nightfrost warriors moved with chilling efficiency, dragging hunter corpses into a pile for burning, their movements devoid of emotion, as if they were merely clearing debris. Rorik's Sunstone pack, in contrast, were more animated, their relief and triumph still palpable, though even their wild energy was tempered by the sheer scale of the carnage. Some of them helped our own Silverfangs tend to our newly wounded. For though the Alphas' intervention had been decisive, the initial assault had taken its toll. Marcus stood between the two visiting Alphas, a study in strained diplomacy. His gratitude was genuine, but the underlying tension, the knowledge that this rescue came with strings, was a palpable weight. The Silverfang pack, my pack, looked to him, their faces a mixture of exhaustion, grief for those lost in the first wave, and a dawning fearful respect for the overwhelming power that had just saved them. Kalen, his sapphire eyes sweeping the blood-soaked clearing, spoke first, his voice as cold and clear as a winter morning. The human threat is more organized than anticipated, their weapons more sophisticated. Your pack, Alpha Marcus, was fortunate. The implication was clear, fortunate that he had arrived. My offer of a formal alliance, under Nightfrost protection, is now more pertinent than ever. Delay is a luxury you can no longer afford. His gaze, sharp and possessive, flicked to me again, a silent underscoring of the terms. Before Marcus could respond, Rorik let out a soft chuckle, a sound like stones rumbling in a riverbed. He wiped a smear of blood from his muzzle with the back of his hand, his molten gold eyes fixed on Kaelin. Fortunate indeed, Ice King. Fortunate that the south wind also answered the scent of battle. He turned to Marcus, his expression more open, though no less intense. Kaelin speaks of protection. I speak of partnership. The Sunstone Pact does not seek to rule the Silverfang, but to stand with you, to share the burden and the spoils of driving these human filth from our lands, all our lands. His gaze, too, found me, but it held a different quality than Kaelin's. Less ownership, more a searching, almost challenging curiosity. The air between the two alphas crackled, an almost visible current of animosity. Ice and fire, their elemental opposition made manifest. Kaelin, the embodiment of cold, calculated order. Rorik, the avatar of wild, passionate strength. And my pack, my alpha, caught squarely in the middle, with me as the unwilling fulcrum. Both your offers are significant, Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral, though I could sense the immense pressure he was under. The Silverfang are in your debt. We will honor that. But decisions of such magnitude cannot be made in the shadow of battle, over the bodies of our fallen and our enemies. He gestured to the grim clearing. We need time to mourn, to heal, to consider the path that best serves our survival and our identity. Identity? Kaelin's voice was laced with a faint, chilling amusement. Identity is a luxury for those who are secure, Alpha Marcus. Survival is paramount. The Nightfrost offers that security, unequivocally. He took a step closer, his sheer physical presence, the aura of his alpha power, almost overwhelming. 3 days, at the Standing Stones, as agreed. Present your decision then, or the Nightfrost will take measures to secure its own interests in this territory, with or without your considered consent. It was not a threat precisely, it was a statement of inevitable fact, delivered with the chilling certainty of a glacier's advance. Rorik bristled, his own alpha scent flaring, a wave of heat against Kaelin's encroaching cold. The Sunstone Pact does not respond well to ultimatums, Ice King, especially those delivered to a wounded ally. He met Kaelin's gaze, a silent battle of wills playing out between them. The Silverfang will choose their own path, and the Sunstone will respect that choice, even if it is not the one we hope for. He then looked at Marcus, a flicker of something like sympathy in his golden eyes. Take the time you need, Marcus. Heal your pack, but know this. The human threat will not wait, and true allies do not dictate terms. They offer a hand. The contrast could not have been starker. Kaelin's unyielding demand versus Rorik's more flexible, though no less intense proposition. My own heart felt like a battleground, torn between the chilling logic of Kaelin's offer, survival at the cost of freedom, and the dangerous allure of Rorik's, a fight for freedom that might cost us everything. The sun was higher now, though still weak, casting long, mournful shadows across the crimson snow. Lyra, her face etched with exhaustion, but her spirit unbroken, was directing the care of the wounded. I saw young Silas, the warrior who had saved me from the silver blade in the first attack, grimacing as she cleaned a fresh gash on his leg. He caught my eye and gave a weak, grateful nod. We were all in this together, bound by blood and shared peril. As the Nightfrost warriors methodically continued their grim cleanup, and the Sunstone Pact began to offer more direct aid to our own injured, a subtle shift occurred. Kaelin, after a final lingering look at me, turned and conferred with Malachor, his movements economical and precise. Rorik, however, after a brief exchange with Leona, began to move through the clearing, not with the air of a conquering alpha, but with a strange, almost restless energy. He stopped to speak briefly with some of our Silverfang warriors, his words low, his scent carrying a surprising degree of empathy as he acknowledged their bravery, their losses. He even paused by Myra, who still sat numb with grief near where Torin had fallen. He didn't speak to her, but he stood there for a moment, his great head bowed, a silent acknowledgement of her pain. It was a small gesture, but it resonated deeply. Then his golden eyes found me again. He began to walk towards me, his movements fluid and powerful, like a great desert cat. My wolf stirred, a mixture of apprehension and a strange, undeniable pull. The moonstone, tucked safely in its pouch, seemed to pulse with a faint warmth against my skin. Kaelin, noticing Rorik's approach towards me, stiffened. His sapphire eyes narrowed, and a low, almost inaudible growl rumbled in his chest, a sound that vibrated through the frozen ground. The air around him seemed to drop several degrees. It was a clear, possessive warning. Rorik either didn't notice or chose to ignore it. He stopped a few feet from me, his presence a wave of warm, vital energy that pushed back against Kaelin's encroaching chill. Up close, his scent was even more potent. Sun-baked earth, wild herbs, the faint thrilling ozone tang of lightning, and something uniquely, compellingly Rorik. His golden eyes, flecked with amber and bronze, held an unnerving intelligence, a depth that hinted at the ancient prophecies clinging to his name. Elara of the Silverfang, he said, his voice a low rumble, softer now, almost intimate despite the surrounding chaos and the icy glare of his rival Alpha. You fought with the heart of a lioness tonight, I saw. The scent of your courage and your fury was strong on the wind. His words, unexpected praise from such a powerful Alpha, sent a strange warmth through me. It was a stark contrast to Kaelin's cold, assessing regard, which seemed to value me only for my lineage and potential. I fought for my pack, I said, my voice a little unsteady. As all true wolves do, Rorik acknowledged, his gaze unwavering. But there was more to your fight than just duty. There was fire, a wildness, the same wildness I sent in the echo of the moon your grandmother carried. His eyes flicked to the pouch at my belt where the moonstone lay hidden. A dangerous gift that, especially when others seek to control it. His meaning was clear, a subtle barb aimed at Kaelin, who still watched us, his expression unreadable, but his displeasure a palpable force. My grandmother was strong, I said, unsure how much to reveal, how much he truly knew or sensed. Strength takes many forms, Rorik mused, his gaze drifting for a moment to the pile of hunter corpses, then back to me. There is the strength of the mountain, unyielding, unchanging, and there is the strength of the river, ever-flowing, adapting, carving its own path. He smiled, a quick, engaging flash of teeth. I have always preferred the river. His words resonated with something deep inside me, with the restless, rebellious spirit of my own wolf, who chafed at the thought of Kaelin's rigid control. But the river could also be destructive, its currents treacherous. The human attack tonight, I said, needing to understand. It was different, more organized. As if they knew. They are learning, Rorik said, his expression turning grim. They are uniting, sharing knowledge, their hatred a common banner. They see us not as individual packs, but as a single enemy to be eradicated. The old ways of isolated territories and occasional skirmishes. They are no longer enough. We must all learn to adapt, or we will all perish. Kaelin offers one solution, I said, glancing towards the imposing North Alpha, who stood like a statue of ice, observing us. Absolute control. Unity through submission. Rorik's gaze followed mine, and a flicker of something hard and unyielding entered his golden eyes. Kaelin's way is the way of the frozen tundra. It preserves, yes, but it also stifles. It demands conformity. Is that what the Silverfang desire? To become another shade of gray in his ever-expanding snowfield? He looked back at me, his intensity almost overwhelming. The South knows a different kind of unity, Elara, one forged in shared struggle, in respect for individual strength, in the heat of a common purpose, a bond of fire, not ice. His words were seductive, appealing to the wilder, more independent part of my nature. But the pragmatist in me, the part that had seen my packmates fall, that understood the desperate need for security, couldn't entirely dismiss Kaelin's chilling logic. Fire can also burn allies, Alpha Rorik, I said quietly. It can rage out of control. A shadow crossed his face, a fleeting glimpse of an old pain, a deep sorrow. It can, he admitted, his voice losing some of its vibrant energy. That is the risk of wielding it. The risk of living freely. But is a life lived in a cage, however safe, truly a life at all? He held my gaze, and I saw not just the fiery alpha, but a wolf who had clearly known loss, who understood the cost of his own untamed nature. The prophecies. Perhaps they were not all of glory. Before I could respond, Marcus approached, his expression weary but resolute. Alpha Rorik, Alpha Kalen, he addressed them both. Your warriors have aided us greatly. There are arrangements to be made for the disposal of the enemy dead, for the quartering of your escorts, should you choose to leave them here until the meeting at the Standing Stones. He was reasserting his authority, however fragile, on his own territory. Kalen gave a curt nod. Malachor will remain with a small contingent to assist and to ensure our agreement is remembered. His emphasis was pointed. Rorik, however, surprised me. Leona and a few of my best scouts will stay, if you'll have them, Marcus, not as guards but as helpers. They are skilled trackers, healers. They can aid your patrols, help secure your borders while you recover. He paused, and perhaps learn from the Silverfang's own resilience. It was a gesture of goodwill, a stark contrast to Kalen's thinly veiled occupation force. Marcus looked surprised. Then a flicker of something like gratitude softened his harsh features. They would be welcome, Alpha Rorik. Thank you. The die was cast. For the next 3 days, the Silverfang territory would host representatives from both the Nightfrost and Sunstone packs. Our home, already a battleground, would now become a stage for their rivalry, their subtle and not so subtle campaigns for influence, for my allegiance. As the Alphas and their chief warriors began to make the grim arrangements for the aftermath of the battle, I found myself standing alone for a moment, the weight of it all pressing down on me. The moonstone felt warm against my skin, a secret thrum of power. My actions earlier, the silent, deadly dispatch of those 3 hunters, replayed in my mind. It had not been my wolf's usual ferocity. It had been something colder, sharper, more precise. A power that had felt both alien and deeply familiar. It magnifies, Lyra had said. What is within you? What was within me? A fierce protectiveness, yes, a rebellious spirit, but also, perhaps, a capacity for a ruthlessness I hadn't known I possessed. A defiance that might be the price I had to pay. The price of defiance, against the hunters, against Kalen's demand, against Rorik's allure, against the fate that seemed determined to make me a pawn. I looked at the crimson snow, now trampled and disturbed by the movements of 3 packs. The scent of blood was a promise of more to come. My choice at the Standing Stones would not just determine my future, or even the Silverfang's. It felt like it would ignite a fuse, the consequences of which I could not yet fathom. And the secret I carried, the echo of the wild moon, the power of the stone. It was no longer just a whisper. It was a growing force, demanding to be acknowledged, and perhaps to be unleashed. The cost of that, I suspected, would be the highest of all. Chapter 7. Unveiled Secrets, Unsheathed Claws. The 3 days that followed were a masterclass in simmering tension, a fragile truce stretched taut over a landscape still raw with violence and grief. The Great Lodge, patched and scarred, became a microcosm of the larger power struggle. Malachor and his 5 Nightfrost warriors established a presence that was both unobtrusive and utterly chilling. They moved with silent precision, their pale furs blending into the winter landscape, their glacial blue eyes missing nothing. Their scent, that cold, sterile aroma of absolute control, permeated the northern edge of our small clearing, a constant, unwelcome reminder of Kalen's ultimatum. They offered assistance that felt more like surveillance, their questions about our defenses and routines too pointed. their offers to reinforce our patrols too insistent. Leona and her Sunstone scouts, by contrast, integrated themselves with a surprising ease. Their warm, earthy scent was a welcome counterpoint to the Night Frost's frigid aura. They genuinely helped, their skills in tracking and healing proving invaluable as our depleted pack struggled to recover. Leona, with her bright amber eyes and infectious energy, seemed to go out of her way to learn the names of our pups, to share stories with our elders, to offer quiet comfort to Myra, who was slowly emerging from the depths of her grief for Torin. Rorik's gesture of leaving them had been a shrewd one, fostering a tentative goodwill that Kaylin's heavy-handedness actively undermined. Yet, beneath the surface of this uneasy cohabitation, the rivalry between the two visiting factions was a palpable force. Glances exchanged between Malachor and Leona were sharp as obsidian shards. Conversations would cease abruptly when a member of the opposing group approached. The very air seemed to hum with their unspoken animosity, a prelude to the confrontation that awaited at the Standing Stones. For myself, these 3 days were a crucible. The weight of the impending choice pressed down on me, a physical ache in my chest. I spent hours walking the borders of our territory, the moonstone amulet tucked beneath my furs, its faint warmth a constant companion. Its presence sharpened my senses, opened channels of perception I hadn't known existed. The forest felt different, more alive. Its secrets whispered on the wind, in the rustle of leaves, in the silent language of the ancient trees. My wolf paced within me, restless, torn. Kaylin's offer, a chillingly logical path to survival, appealed to her pragmatic side, the instinct to protect the pack at all costs. But Rorik's fiery spirit, his talk of partnership and fighting for freedom, resonated with her wilder, untamed heart. The memory of my actions during the Hunter attack, the strange cold power that had flowed through me as I dispatched those 3 humans, haunted my waking hours and infiltrated my dreams. It wasn't the familiar rage of the wolf, but something else, something more. Had the moonstone awakened it? Or had it always been there, dormant, a legacy from my grandmother? I found myself touching the amulet often, feeling its subtle thrum, wondering about the true nature of the power it magnified. Lyra, our pack healer, watched me with her wise, knowing eyes. She didn't press, didn't offer advice beyond her initial cryptic words about trusting my wolf and my heart. But sometimes I would catch her gaze on the pouch where I kept the moonstone, a flicker of something, understanding, apprehension, in their depths. One evening, as the sun bled crimson and orange across the western sky, painting the snow-covered forest in hues of fire and blood, Leona found me at the edge of the sacred grove. I had been standing there for a long time, listening to the wind sigh through the ancient pines, the resting place of so many Silverfang ancestors. "The wind carries many whispers here, Elara," she said softly, her amber eyes reflecting the fiery sunset. Her scent, warm and comforting, was a welcome change from the constant tension of the lodge. "It does," I agreed. "Mostly of sorrow these days." "Sorrow, yes," Leona acknowledged, her gaze gentle, "but also of strength, of resilience. Your ancestors were formidable wolves. Rorik, he has a deep respect for the old bloodlines, for the stories they carry." "He also seems to have a keen interest in mine," I said, unable to keep a touch of weariness from my voice. Leona smiled, a knowing, almost mischievous glint in her eyes. "Rorik is drawn to power, Elara, not just the brute force of an alpha, but the deeper currents. The echoes of the wild moon you carry? It's a rare song, one he hasn't heard in a long, long time." "What does he want with it?" I asked bluntly. "To control it, like Kaylin might?" Her smile faded, replaced by a more serious expression. "Rorik doesn't seek to control what is wild. He seeks to understand it, to partner with it. The prophecies that cling to his name, they speak of a time of great upheaval, of a reckoning. They speak of a wolf who walks with the fire of the sun, and another who carries the untamed heart of the moon, standing together against a shadow that threatens to devour all. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, and the air around us seemed to hum with a sudden, ancient significance. My breath caught. A wolf with the fire of the sun, Rorik clearly, and one who carries the untamed heart of the moon. Me? Was this the true reason for his interest? Not just an alliance, not just a mate, but a fated partner in some epic, world-altering prophecy? The thought was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. The moonstone against my skin pulsed with a sudden, intense warmth. That's a heavy burden to place on an echo, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Fate rarely chooses lightly, Leona said, her gaze direct. Rorik believes your strength, your true strength, is yet to be fully awakened. He believes Kaelin would see it chained, or broken to his will. Rorik, he would see it fly. Her words settled deep within me, stirring a confusing mix of fear and a burgeoning defiant hope. To fly, to be unleashed. It was a seductive promise, a stark contrast to the gilded cage Kaelin offered. The following day, Malachor approached me. He found me attempting to repair a section of the lodge wall, my hands clumsy with the unfamiliar tools. His presence, as always, was like a sudden drop in temperature. Your efforts are commendable, Elara, he said, his voice devoid of inflection, but futile without proper resources and skilled labor. Alpha Kaelin has builders, artisans. Under his guidance, this lodge could be a fortress, impenetrable. And its inhabitants? Prisoners, I countered, meeting his icy gaze. A flicker of something, perhaps surprise at my directness, crossed his pale features. Secure, Elara, not prisoners. There is a difference. Order provides security. Freedom, as your southern acquaintances champion it, often leads to chaos and destruction. His eyes narrowed. Alpha Kaelin understands your value. Your lineage is strong. You would be highly esteemed in the Nightfrost Pack. Your pups would inherit the strength of two formidable lines. Esteemed, valued, like a prize broodmare. My wolf snarled silently. And if my heart, my wolf, chooses otherwise? I asked. The words a challenge. Malachor's thin lips tightened. The heart is a fickle guide, Elara. The wolf's instinct is for survival. Alpha Kaelin offers that. Anything else is sentiment. A weakness that a pack facing extinction cannot afford. He paused, then added, his voice dropping to a near whisper, though it lost none of its chilling authority. Do not mistake Alpha Kaelin's patience for weakness. He will have what he deems necessary for the strength and stability of the North. And you, Elara, are deemed necessary. His words were a cold iron band around my chest. No pretense of partnership, no talk of heart, just a bald statement of intent. Possession. The tension escalated as the day of the meeting at the Standing Stones drew nearer. Small skirmishes, verbal and sometimes nearly physical, broke out between the Nightfrost and Sunstone contingents, quickly suppressed by Marcus or Boren, but leaving a residue of bitterness. The Silver Fang Pack watched, their anxiety palpable. They were caught in the crossfire of a rivalry that had little to do with them, yet their fate hinged on its outcome. On the final morning, as a gray, somber dawn broke, Lyra came to me. She looked older, her usual serenity clouded by a deep worry. The time is upon us, Elara, she said quietly. Tonight, at the rising of the first moon of the wane, you will face them. She held out her hand. In her palm lay a single, perfectly preserved wolfsbane flower, its deep purple petals almost black in the dim light. Your grandmother always carried one when she went to council, or when she faced a difficult choice. She said it reminded her that even the most beautiful things can hold hidden poison, and that true strength often lies in discerning the difference. I took the flower, its velvety petals cool against my skin, a symbol of beauty and danger, of discernment, another piece of my grandmother's legacy. Lyra, I began, needing to voice the fear that had been growing within me. This power, the moonstone, what if it's too much? What if I can't control it? What if it changes me into something I'm not? Lyra's gaze was steady, her hand closing over mine. Power is a tool, Elara, like a knife. It can be used to carve, to heal, or to kill. The nature of the tool does not change. It is the intent of the hand that wields it that matters. Your grandmother, she wrestled with her gift. It was not an easy path. But she never lost sight of who she was, of her love for this pack. Her eyes softened. Trust yourself, child. Trust the heart your mother and grandmother nurtured in you. The wildness is part of you, yes, but so is your compassion, your loyalty. They are not mutually exclusive. Her words were a balm to my frayed nerves, a small anchor in the storm of my emotions. As the day progressed, a new, more sinister element began to creep into the already tense atmosphere. One of our patrols, led by Silas, returned late, their expressions grim. They had found fresh hunter tracks, not far from our western border. Not the scattered tracks of disorganized remnants, but the deliberate, purposeful markings of a new, well-equipped group. And with them, a scent that made my blood run cold, the faint, almost undetectable trace of something other, another shifter pack, but not Nightfrost, not Sunstone, something unfamiliar, something that smelled of damp earth, decay, and a cold, ancient hunger. Blackwood, Boren growled, his scarred face contorting in a snarl when Silas reported his findings to Marcus. They dare to encroach now, while we are distracted? His gaze flicked meaningfully towards the watchful Nightfrost and Sunstone warriors. The Blackwood pack, our longtime rivals to the east, were known for their treachery, their scavenging nature. They were not as powerful as the Nightfrost or Sunstone, but they were cunning, and they had a knack for striking when their opponents were vulnerable. Were they aligning with the hunters, or simply taking advantage of the chaos? The news sent a fresh wave of anxiety through the Silver Fang. It was as if the world was conspiring against us, new threats emerging even as we struggled to deal with the old. That evening, as the sky began to darken and the first pale stars pricked the velvet canvas, the time came. Marcus, Boren, Lyra, and a hand-picked escort of 5 of our strongest remaining warriors prepared to leave for the Standing Stones. I was to accompany them. The moonstone was warm against my skin, the dried wolfsbane flower tucked securely beside it. My wolf was a coiled spring of anticipation and dread. Malachor and his Nightfrost warriors, and Leona with her Sunstone scouts, also prepared to depart, their expressions unreadable. They would meet their respective alphas at the sacred site. The journey to the Standing Stones was made in tense silence. The ancient stones, colossal granite monoliths arranged in a vast circle on a windswept plateau, loomed out of the twilight like skeletal fingers pointing to the darkening sky. They had stood here for untold generations, silent witnesses to the histories and rituals of countless shifter packs. Tonight, they would witness a decision that could shatter the fragile peace of the entire region. Kalen was already there, a formidable silhouette against the rising moon, his Nightfrost warriors arrayed behind him like a wall of ice. His alpha presence radiated a cold, unyielding power that seemed to drain the warmth from the air. Minutes later, Rorik arrived from the south, his Sunstone pack flowing into the clearing like a wave of desert heat. He moved with a lithe, predatory grace, his golden eyes fixed on Kalen, a silent challenge in their depths. His aura was one of raw, untamed energy, a stark contrast to Kalen's glacial composure. The 2 alphas faced each other across the center of the stone circle, the air between them thick with unspoken animosity. Their packs mirrored their leaders, tense and watchful. The Silver Fang contingent, small and beleaguered, stood to one side, Marcus at our head, his face a grim mask. The moon, a sliver of silver in the inky sky, cast long dancing shadows, transforming the familiar stones into grotesque, looming figures. The wind howled across the plateau, carrying the scents of pine, snow, and the charged metallic tang of impending conflict. Kalen spoke first, his voice carrying effortlessly over the wind, as cold and sharp as his gaze. The time for deliberation is over, Alpha Marcus. The night frost offer stands. Security, stability, survival, pledge your loyalty, your pack will be integrated. Elara will become my mate. These are my terms. No room for negotiation, no pretense of choice, a demand. Rorik stepped forward, his movements fluid, his golden eyes blazing. The Sunstone offers partnership, Marcus. Alliance. We will fight beside you, not rule over you. We will honor your traditions, your autonomy, Elara. He turned his gaze to me, and it was intense, compelling, a fire that seemed to reach out and touch my very soul. Her heart will choose its own path. If that path leads to the Sunstone, she will be welcomed not as a prize, but as a queen. A queen. The word hung in the air, a stark contrast to Kaelin's blunt, my mate. Marcus looked from one alpha to the other, the weight of his decision etched on his face. Then he looked at me, his eyes, weary but filled with a deep paternal love, held a silent question. The choice, ultimately, was mine. My pack would follow my lead, bear the consequences of my decision. My heart hammered against my ribs. My wolf paced, torn, the moonstone pulsed against my skin, its energy a confusing torrent. Ice or fire, security or freedom, submission or a dangerous, uncertain partnership? Before I could speak, before I could voice the impossible decision, a new scent cut through the frigid air, sharp and foul. The scent Silas had reported: damp earth, decay, and that cold ancient hunger, and with it the unmistakable stench of humans. And silver, shadows detached themselves from the darkness at the edge of the plateau, surrounding the standing stones. Hunters, dozens of them, and among them, larger, more menacing forms. The Blackwood shifters, their eyes glowed with a malevolent red light in the gloom. A trap. This wasn't just a meeting. It was an ambush. The Blackwood, allied with the hunters, had chosen this moment, when three packs were gathered, potentially divided, to strike. A cold fury, sharper and more potent than any I had felt before, surged through me. The moonstone blazed against my skin, no longer just warm, but searing hot. The wolfsbane flower seemed to release its potent, dangerous scent. My grandmother's legacy, the echo of the wild moon, the power magnified. It was no longer about choosing between two alphas. It was about survival. My claws unsheathed, not just the physical claws of my wolf, but something deeper, something forged in the heart of the moon's untamed power. The unveiled secrets were about to meet unsheathed claws, and the snow at the standing stones was about to run very, very red. Chapter 8. A Choice Forged in Moonfire. The ambush was sprung with brutal, devastating efficiency. One moment, the tense standoff between three alphas. The next, a whirlwind of chaos and the stench of betrayal. Arrows, tipped with silver and blackwood venom, hissed through the air from the surrounding darkness. The hunters, emboldened by their shifter allies, charged from the shadows, their war cries guttural and filled with a chilling, fanatical hatred. The standing stones, sacred ground for generations, became an instant battlefield. Kaelin reacted with the speed of a striking viper. His roar of fury was a physical shockwave, and the Nightfrost warriors, disciplined even in surprise, formed a defensive perimeter around him, their pale forms a bulwark against the sudden onslaught. Their movements were precise, economical, each blow delivered with lethal intent. Ice met treachery, and the first wave of attackers recoiled from their unyielding defense. Rorik, in contrast, exploded into motion like a wildfire. His answering roar was a challenge to the treacherous night itself, and the Sunstone Pack, mirroring his fiery spirit, launched themselves into the fray with a joyful, reckless abandon. They were a whirlwind of russet and ochre fur, their attacks less coordinated than the Nightfrost's, but filled with a passionate ferocity that was terrifying to behold. Fire met deceit, and the enemy lines buckled under their savage assault. Our small Silverfang contingent, caught in the crossfire, reacted with the desperate courage of wolves defending their last stand. Marcus, his form already blurring as the change took him, bellowed orders, trying to rally us, to find a defensible position amidst the ancient stones. Borin, a grizzled titan of fury, was already tearing into a group of hunters who had dared to breach the inner circle. My own transformation was a blinding inferno. The moonstone against my skin was no longer just hot. It felt like a fragment of a star, searing its power into my very being. The wolfsbane's sharp, intoxicating scent filled my senses. This was beyond the normal change. My bones reshaped with agonizing speed, my senses exploded to a level of acuity that was almost painful. The world became a symphony of screams, snarls, the clang of metal, the hiss of silver, and the overwhelming coppery tang of blood. But it wasn't just my physical form that altered. A profound shift occurred within my consciousness. The fear, the indecision, the weight of the choice between Kaelin and Rorik, it all burned away, consumed by a singular, ice-cold clarity. There was no choice to be made between them now. There was only the enemy before us, the treachery that sought to annihilate us all. My wolf, Elara, was a part of this new consciousness, but it was as if another, older, more primal entity had awakened within me, merging with her, guiding her. The echo of the wild moon, my grandmother's legacy, was no longer a whisper. It was a roaring tempest. I moved, not with the calculated precision of the night frost, nor the wild abandon of the sunstone. I moved like a phantom, a creature of shadow and moonlight, the power of the moonstone flowing through me, guiding my limbs, sharpening my instincts to a razor's edge. The hunters and their Blackwood allies seemed to move in slow motion, their intentions telegraphed, their weaknesses glaringly obvious. A Blackwood shifter, his fur a matted, unhealthy black, lunged at Lyra, who was trying to shield a wounded Silverfang warrior. His jaws, dripping with venomous saliva, snapped for her throat. Before any of our pack could react, I was there. I didn't meet his charge head-on. I flowed around him, a blur of gray motion, my fangs finding the vulnerable spot beneath his jaw with a sickening, fatal crunch. He went down without a sound, his malevolent red eyes glazing over. Lyra looked at me, her own eyes wide, not with fear, but with a dawning, awestruck understanding. She saw the change in me, the terrible, beautiful power that now radiated from my form. The battle raged around the standing stones, a chaotic, desperate struggle for survival.